Watching the medium-term budget statement this afternoon with millions of South Africans as Free Market Foundation economist Loane Sharpe. He now joins us in studio for further discussions on the medium-term budget statement. Good evening, Loane, and thank you for joining us. First things first, give us your overall assessment of Finance Minister Nene's midterm budget policy.
Well, there are two ways to look at it, and I think the first way is how did he perform, how does the budget look in relation to what people were expecting. And then the other way to look at it is how does it look compared to the long arm of history. Where are we today in relation to where we were 10 or 20 years ago? There's no question that over the last 20 years, the government has followed consistently a path of fiscal restraint. Every year, commentators seem to expect the worst and they hang on the minister's every word. But every year we have a pleasant surprise to see that there is this pattern of fiscal restraint. I think some of the important challenges the government is facing are not addressed in the budget, or certainly not the medium-term budget policy statement. For example, the quality of expenditure, the efficiency of expenditure, wasteless and fruitless expenditure. These are things that have become a concern over the last 5 years. They're a concern to rating agencies. But really, the minister has attended to the concerns of international rating agencies. He's attended to the concerns of international investors. He hasn't deviated in any unexpected way from what investors would like to see, both domestically and internationally. So yes, I think it's another budget of fiscal restraint. The talking about tax increases, we're talking about tiny amounts. The talk about restraint of public servant salaries, that's something of a PR exercise. So I would say the budget is not really the right framework to address the most important impact government has on the economy. Overall government consumes about 32% of all income produced in the economy in a year, which is neither high nor low by any international comparison, and it's substantially lower than ever we had 20 years or more ago. So it's a pattern of fiscal restraint, but the important issues are extra budgetary issues. They relate to public service unionization, cadre deployment, the issues around tax revolts that are occurring at the moment. The budget's not the right platform to address those issues, but they are important issues.
Now, let's touch on the challenge for the minister of poor performing state enterprises, for instance, SAA, the Post Office, and Eskom, which also needs a huge capital injection. What do you think he needs to do to arrest these issues?
Well, I think it's wrong to think of state-owned enterprises as different from government departments. I think government departments and state-owned enterprises suffer from many of the same ills. One of those is very poor managerial quality. We find that people, in fact, who have excellent credentials in the state-owned enterprises are not permitted to make the necessary changes because of political interference. So even if we have good quality managers in the state-owned enterprises, they never really are given an opportunity to turn around. It really will require market competition, exposing these enterprises to that. But as I say, it's not something that's restricted to Eskom or SAA. Those challenges of managerial capability exist in government departments in general.
Okay. Now, on the back of economic growth constraints that he acknowledged during his speech, South Africa is said to have been growing below its potential now for the past 5 years. Is there any particular reason for this?
Well, I think, again, in South Africa, we have this tendency really to look too closely in the mirror. Just 10 months ago, we were looking at 2.8% growth for the year. Now we're looking at 1.4%. I can tell you in 10 months' time, we'll be revising it upward. One shouldn't become too concerned, really, with month-to-month movements. I can tell you now, if the US economy grows 2.5%, next year, which seems likely. The world economy will grow 3.75%, and South Africa's growth will probably exceed 4% in those circumstances. All of the good things in South Africa really depend in the short term on what happens internationally. Our growth prospects as far as government interventions are concerned is really a long-term path. It's not something, I think there's maybe an overreaction really in terms of cutting this and cutting that and talking about tax hikes and things like that. We're really talking about very marginal revenue losses. I mean, SARS will collect 10 billion rand less revenue, but we have nearly R1 trillion budget. These are tiny figures. I think one should be optimistic. Certainly the international economy is turning around, the US economy is turning around, the world economy will turn around as a result, and South Africa will be a primary beneficiary of that.
Now, unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I quickly have to ask you, President Zuma was quoted in the media this week as saying that South Africans are generally lazy people who always rely on government care. How important is it for the country to have more entrepreneurs in this period?
Well, I completely disagree with the president. I think South Africans are, in general, very entrepreneurial. I can point to countless examples of areas. I mean, look, what is the taxi industry, which provides 11 million commuters with transport to work and home every day? What is that except an alternative to public transport? I think this idea that South Africans are lazy is just completely incorrect. We've got a vibrant informal sector. We've got 2 million outstanding businesses in the country. The return on shareholders' funds is over 25% for the economy as a whole. The state of entrepreneurship in South Africa is very good. We just need some tailwinds from the global economy.
Loane, thank you so much for joining us. We have to leave it there for now.